Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, home of the modern whitetail hunter. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this week on the show, I'm joined by two new hunters that I had the privilege to mentor this year on the Back 40. And we're talking first deer stories, learning to hunt, and more. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by First Light. And today, folks, we're talking new hunter mentorship. We're going to get you updated on what's happened with the Back 40 in 2021, and then we're going to dive into a couple great stories about two new hunters that I had the privilege of helping mentor on their first successful deer hunts. So joining me today, we've got those two aforementioned new hunters, Forrest Wagoner and Evan Barrett. And then we also have Hank Forrester, the director of hunting at the National Deer Association, who's the mastermind behind this Field to Fork mentorship program that I was doing all this through. So why should you listen to this? Well, if you're a new hunter, I'm thinking this one's going to inspire you. You're going to hear from two folks who likely went through the exact same things that you are, who struggled to figure things out, who sought out help, and who ultimately had a pretty life-changing experience. I think this conversation is going to give you some hope. I think it's going to excite you. I think it's going to motivate you. So if that's you, this is absolutely an episode you want to listen to. But on the flip side, if you're an experienced deer hunter, I think this is still going to be one. Maybe it's even more important for you because, at least for me, hearing Evan and Forrest's stories, it was a breath of fresh air. It was exactly what I needed after a long season of worrying about all the minutia of deer hunting, obsessing over specific deer or strategies or my goals or what's going well, what's not going well, all that kind of stuff that you get wrapped up when you're so into this thing. These guys helped kind of lift me out of that fog and remember why we do this stuff in the first place. Their stories were just they were just really, really cool. It just kind of filled me with good feelings, I guess, for lack of a better word. And you know what? These days, we need that kind of stuff sometimes. So that's my pitch. In short, I think at least what I felt was a sense of new energy after this conversation, new excitement to get out hunting myself and help other people. And if that sounds good to you, I think you'll enjoy this one. So without further ado, why don't we get into it? Here's my chat with Evan, Forrest, and Hank. All right, so now here with me on the show is Hank Forrester, Forrest Wagoner, and Evan Barrett. We've got the Field to Fork crew back together again, and I'm very excited to get to kind of wax nostalgic on a couple really fun weekends we had over the course of the past, 6-7 months, I guess it's been. So thank you, each and every one of you, for making time here to jump back on. I want to jump right into stuff, though. Rather than the pleasantries, I'm just going to jump into the story, if you don't mind. And Hank, You are the one I want to jump into this with first. We'll get to Evan and Forrest and your guys' stories about what led you to wanting to learn to hunt and what led you to the Field to Fork program. But Hank, you and me kicked off, I don't know when this was. I think it was late December 2020. We hunted together on the Back 40. And we did a podcast afterwards with Nick, CEO over at the NDA, and we talked about the plan for the Back 40, how we were donating it to the National Deer Association, the hopes and dreams for what would happen on the property in the months and years to come, the plan to try to use this place as a training ground for new hunters, as a place to help teach people about hunting, to demonstrate different things about hunting and land management and all that kind of stuff. And we kind of left that conversation that day. I think we talked in January 2021 then at that point about, this is what we hope is going to happen. This is what we dream will happen someday. Now, stuff has actually happened. So I'm hoping you can help us, fill in the gaps between then and now, at least up into when hunts started. And tell me, from your perspective, coming off of that conversation with the three of us and then you going out on your own, what happened in the intervening months leading up to anybody stepping foot on the property? What kind of things had to be organized? What was the story internally for you guys at the NDA to figure out, how are we going to manage this place? What are we going to do with this place? What were those next steps?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mark. I wish I would have listened to that podcast before we got on here today so I could remember exactly what we had said. But I think we followed the battle plan fairly closely. We of course, said that we were going to reach out and form a volunteer committee, to oversee the property, some local, some state representatives for NDA for Michigan, and of course, a few of our staff members. But we did form a habitat committee and kind of a property management committee made up of a diverse group of guys in the area. And they've really taken the lead on, day-to-day oversight of the property improvements, and really prepping it for the hunt. Of course, there were some logistic things to figure out, but we did, in fact, write a full management plan for the property. My colleague Matt Ross helped a lot with that from the conservation department. But of course, a lot of our volunteers on the committee, either, professionally or just as a passion, do a lot of land management, habitat management in the local area. Many longtime NDA members and many from the Southeast Michigan branch, which is kind of local to that area. So we came out in March, and you were gracious to join us again and give them a kind of a personal tour of the back 40, which I know really jazzed them up, and they really appreciated that. And that's kind of how they formulated the plan. They wanted to, maximize the potential of the back 40 for wildlife and diverse wildlife, but also maximize the opportunity for new hunters to harvest their first deer. And of course, carry on the legacy that both you and Meat Eater, began. And so that was a lot of what went into our Zoom discussions to kind of create this management plan. But a quick highlight, I guess I should just go, through their names real quick just to thank them for their service. But we had two NDA interns that actually stayed on, and they were interns the semester that we kind of took over management that March, and they stayed on full year. And people have seen them in the photos from the back 40, and they helped mentor the new hunters. I'm sure they'll come up. But Sam Hogue and Xavier Austin really helped us out in an intern capacity and later as a volunteer. But kind of the leads with the Southeastern Michigan rancher, Corey Francis and John Neville, Drew Gilby, and from kind of a state level, Chad Thielen and Eric Schnell helped out a lot. And so just briefly, I'll just say that, we planted 18 to 20 acres of switch grass. They maintained the 9 acres of food plots and added lime and fertilizer seed. They added 4 acres of native prairie seed with forbs and wildflowers, 2 acres of short grass. They planted an American chestnut orchard that we're hoping we will get FDA approval for, like a genetically modified American chestnut that will not be susceptible to the blight and actually create kind of a foster area for, chestnuts to come back in that part of Michigan. We're working on some water, added a gate and stuff like that. We added bird houses to the property, 5 Moultrie cell cameras, just you name it. They put in a lot of work. They checked on the bees for you, a lot of spraying and planting. And even in I think April or May, Xavier, our intern, had never killed a turkey, and they took him out there, and he got the first game animal off the back 40 under our management, a turkey. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really, you read through that so quickly, it's easy to overlook. Oh yeah, they did a bunch of stuff. Like it sounds like, oh, so easy. They planted 9 acres of this. They planted 20 acres of that. They planted an acre of this. That is a ton of work. I mean, those folks put in a lot of time, and they weren't getting paid for it. I mean, these are people just volunteering. So I want to second what you said as far as giving those volunteers kudos to really, really make a point that was a tremendous gift of their time and energy and their tools and their equipment and all that stuff. It was really cool to get to watch that from afar and get updates and see what was happening. and just to see what we began really take an awesome step forward. So it's exciting from my perspective to see that property continue to flourish and continue to see it. It really is morphing into what we dreamed it would be someday. It started out as just this kind of raw piece of dirt, and the hope was like, man, someday this might be a wildlife paradise, and it's sure trending that direction. It really is. So great work to you and all the guys there that were doing all that. That was exciting to see. So from there, Hank, habitat work was done in the spring and in the summer, and then in late August we had our first educational event for the Field to Fork program. Can you quickly set the stage for what was the game plan for that? And then I want to get Evan and Forrest to kind of introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about them. But real quick, Hank, from your perspective, what was in your mind? What was your hopes for this thing we were going to put on in August?
Sure. So, we kind of discussed it with the group of both the habitat and, people interested in helping us with the programmatic aspect of the Field to Forks on the back 40. So we decided that we wanted to do what we kind of term a community-based event. So like a long time, or, a Field to Fork program that happened over the course of a season. And most of ours do, but sometimes, the actual organized event will be condensed into like a 4-day weekend or something. And then, there hopefully be, follow-up opportunities to go hunting, but it's kind of not in a package deal. But we wanted, because of the opportunity, a branch in volunteers, and Michigan's always been a strong state for the National Deer Association, but we wanted to incorporate the local community, recruit local new hunters, and really try to just build on that kind of community and local feel. So we went out and we recruited hunters via a Google survey. We surveyed potential new hunters. We also had to recruit more mentors, to facilitate these hunts, and also host properties because, the back 40 is a great piece of property, but we really can only hunt about 4 people at a time on the property. So we wanted to, be able to take a few more hunters than that in the program. And we ended up selecting 10 hunters for our first year. And we set about kind of training them and giving them the background they need to be successful. So we offer all of our Field to Fork participants free online hunter education and free access to our Deer Hunting 101 course with huntered.com. And so they kind of do the initial, prerequisite at-home education. And then we brought them in September for a training day before the season started, or August. I guess it was before the season started, late August. We utilized a local Michigan DNR range for the shooting portion, cooked some venison meals. They had gotten a lot of the deer biology and that kind of stuff from the online courses. They even got, the hunter education courses, but we like to reiterate safety and a few other things. But I'd say the highlight of the event was the property tour that you helped us lead.
Yeah, so we brought everybody out to the property, and then I kind of walked everyone through to see all the most important locations in the farm, and throughout that time, I tried to share as much as I thought might be relevant about, how deer use the property, how different things on the property might be representative of stuff that you could see out on your own hunting on public land or somewhere else. Kind of talk through hunt setups and mindset and things I'm thinking about when I'm out there. And I don't know, try to be as helpful and use this landscape as sort of a template for a whole bunch of different deer hunting discussions. So that's what that looked like from my perspective. Let's hear from the guys though that were actually learning. So Forrest, Evan, let's get a little bit of what led you to this point. Forrest, can you kick me off here with a little bit about what led you to want to learn to deer hunt and how you ended up making your way to get involved here with the Field to Fork program?
Yeah, absolutely. So it pretty much started out with growing up fishing all the time and seeing some friends as I was a kid going hunting with their family and friends and being curious about that. And as years went on, I was never really invited or had enough interest to move forward to really pursue it. mostly because, when you're young, you're looking for an adult to say, hey, let's go hunting, but that just never worked out. And after fishing for many years and getting more and more into other types of fishing, starting to get surrounded by people who can now say, hey, have you ever killed a deer? It's like, well, no. It's like, well, you should do that sometime. It's like, okay, how do I do that? And I say, well, you got to find a mentor. And I'm like, okay. And then I just kind of sit there and wait for an invitation, and nothing happens. And I'm like, okay. And then about 5 years ago, when I discovered the Meat Eater podcast and the Meat Eater episodes, and seeing the culture of cooking and conservation and everything, that was lining right up with my main interests at the time, which was, fly fishing and fishing in rivers. And when that became a huge passion in my life, conservation was natural. Like, this is so beautiful. I want to take care of this forever for generations to come. And then seeing the Meat Eater platform, being exposed to that and seeing, this isn't just about harvesting deer or getting large antlers. There's a giant conservation effort behind it. And that was a big part of it to me. And then the topper was, you can make wild game taste good. And, you can have, at the most a complete lifestyle surrounding it if you want to. And if not, that's okay too. There's plenty of options to get outside and experience your state or your, local natural resources, without having the need to feel like you have to go on a vacation every 6 months somewhere, in order to enjoy yourself and reconnect and that type of thing. So at that point, after doing some networking over the past few years, asking, start with friends, then I started with friends of friends, coworkers, friends. And I did get a few people interested to talk to me and would answer my questions about equipment and places to go or resources to check out. But just had a few closed doors where I could tell that there's still no invitation. And, after all the reading and resources online, it's like, okay, I get it. They want that time for themselves. And, I could respect that. And just could not find an avenue to get out in the field. So it was very tempting to go afield myself, but the field dressing, I think, is where, as many videos as you watch or books that you read or diagrams that you study, there's still if there's a worst case scenario, I don't want to be in that worst case scenario and field dressing a deer.
Mm-hmm.
So
from there, how did you discover the Field to Fork program? How did that eventually fall in your lap?
I was just on my phone on Instagram looking through things, and if memory serves correct, I believe it was spring of last year or maybe early summer. I believe it was the first light ad in my Instagram feed with just I believe it was Field to Fork or Back 40 to Fork or something along that lines. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is okay. This is something where, adult led or for adults to learn how to harvest deer for their own consumption. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I want. I'm not looking for somebody to teach me how to shoot a big buck or anything like that. No. I just want to get out there and get food. Clicked on that. And that began the whole process with engaging with the NDA and the forms, filling out the forms and the application process. And, Hank just kind of took it from there with us. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And I have 4 small kids at home, and I know that hunting takes a lot of time. And I'm like, oh no, did I just do something I can't handle with the time commitment? And I told my wife, and she's like, okay. And I said, are you all right? She said, yes, I know you've been wanting to do this for years. Go for it. I'm like, oh, and then just, I've been on cloud nine ever since that invitation to have the opportunity.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, I want to dive into a bunch more of that, but first let's get Evan's side of the story. Evan, can you give us your version?
Yeah, no, great. A lot of it follows, what Forrest described. But I think what sort of drew me in initially was my passion for food. I've spent most of my life cooking, for a good portion of it professionally, but, now more as a hobby. And, I got used to and almost, tired of the same chicken, pork, and beef, right? And so I felt I'd come very far with the typical meats that you can get at a supermarket, and then push that further and start sourcing those better and doing better. But at the same time, like, there was this just wide variety out there that was different and exotic, and it was going to be much more challenging. And so that is what sort of drew me in initially. And I had this sort of feeling or calling or what happened, but well before I knew about Meat Eater and that there was a community out there that was hunting and fishing for food. And what shocked me was the caliber of cuisine and the caliber of cooking and thoughtfulness that went into the harvest and that went into the execution of the raw product. And I was hooked immediately. I mean, that was it. Like, I don't think I'd ever fit into a mold so perfectly, and finding a community out there that was inspired and was into taking wild game and harvesting your own proteins and doing that thing, and also foraging and all these other ingredient sourcing methods, and then applying like really, really excellent, really, really high technique. I mean, it was fascinating. And so that was a huge, huge draw. And then as it went further, I started with birds. I did what I feel is a very typical Michigan thing, where you get a shotgun, you get a pump action shotgun, because you can change the barrels, you can use it for deer hunting, you can use it for, it holds a lot of purpose. And so I started by hunting birds and doing upland. I just fell in love with upland, and it just kept kind of growing from there. I wanted to, after hunting pheasants, I wanted to hunt grouse, and after grouse, I wanted to move on to the next thing. And eventually it was, turkeys, and then it was deer. And I had been successful through reading and watching videos and doing a lot of research on my own, and in some cases getting guides and different methods, but I was unsuccessful and put in a lot of effort, more effort into deer hunting than really any other type of hunting that I had tried up until that point. And it was very disheartening at a certain point, where it was very challenging. And I was started to, feel conflicted about it. And it was when my sister had, she hadn't even, heard of the Back 40 TV show at the time, YouTube show at the time. Of course, by this point, I'm, deep in it. I'm listening to the podcast and watching the shows. And so she sends over this, I think it was, she got an email from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources and was just like, hey, does this look like something you'd be interested in doing? It looks like a mentorship for adult hunters for deer. And I was like, do you have any idea what this is? Do you have any clue what you just done? We need to sign up for this. And lucky for us, we were both accepted. And it just turned out to be just an unbelievable experience.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co, and make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater.
So from there, then, okay, that's great to get both of your stories and hear what led you there, and it's encouraging to hear just how spot on this whole program sounded. Like, once you discovered it, you were like, "Oh, this is the thing I've been waiting for forever." What I'm curious about though next is that first experience. So that, the day you went out and went on the range and you got to eat some venison with folks and you met the mentors, and we came out to the back 40 and I walked you guys around. What was your take after that? So that was your first real experience with the program. Now you kind of have an idea of what you're in for. I guess maybe Evan, we'll keep going with you since we're just heard from you. What was your thoughts on how that went? Was that a helpful day? Was the whole process up to that point what you were hoping? Curious about that.
Yeah, no. So there was great communication leading up to it. As Hank pointed out, they gave us a ton of resources so that we could do a bunch of homework, because you had a mixture of people that were coming to this program. I had some hunting experience. I had a hunting license. I was familiar with firearms and crossbows at the time, and others, were not. So it was well managed for sort of like all of the range of people that were going to be coming. And I thought that there was a good level of communicating, sort of prepping people and knowing what expectations were coming next. So it was, although it was, it was a bit intimidating. It was not in any way, it was handled well enough that it was not intimidating at all, to such that you wouldn't want to show up. You were excited when you got there. I think that there was any intimidation there. It's just that you wanted to be present of mind and you didn't want to, screw anything up type of thing. And so, but the way that they handled you from the time you arrived, there wasn't an opportunity to screw anything up. It was very, very, very well managed. Introductions all around. It was great to see a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds who were there for a lot of different reasons. And I think that really started to bring down the level of any sort of caution that anybody may have had, because people come to this program and come to hunting in different ways and from different backgrounds. And so to hear the stories was really great, and to get to know each other. And then it was orchestrated in a very safe manner. So, people who may have never handled a firearm or a crossbow or anything like that were treated very, very well. And again, so the longer you were there, the more that it became more comfortable. And then from there, Hank will not brag about how good his cooking is, but his cooking and his sausage is unbelievable. And so don't listen to him when he doesn't talk. So that was really fun, because it was like a sneak peek into the future. And then of course the tour, and you showing up for that, Forrest and I almost fainted, and that was cool. Yeah. We held each other up, and no, I mean, just the fact that that everyone was like there to put their time in. I mean, the mentors were there to put their time in. The NDA was there, and then you were there. I mean, it just kept on like reinforcing just how special this was, and what it meant, and what kind of commitment it meant. And so then, as a mentee, and I think I can speak for the mentees, it was like, wow, this is amazing, and we, you know, we're gonna be handled well. Like this is gonna go well, because you're, you know, again, you're in a new circumstance, you're around new people, and you're ultimately out there to do something that a lot of people have learned over many years, and we're trying to shore that up into a very small period of time. But it just kept feeling better every single minute with how well it was put together.
Yeah, that's awesome. What was your take, Forrest?
Yeah, same thing along the organization of the whole event myself, and I was too amazed by the other mentees and the backgrounds. All of us had different reasons, and it was really neat to see the broad spectrum. And yeah, there was that same amount of apprehension about, is this, you know, am I in the right area? Am I way out of my lane here? And that kind of thing. But once the introductions and hearing everybody's story, which takes a little bit of courage, because you just meet all of these strangers and you're standing around, and it's okay, why do you want to do this? And so I think that's kind of the beginning of the journey, is everybody kind of announcing out loud, you know, what their hopes and dreams are for this. And yeah, that was a big part to kind of instantly kind of break the ice in a way, and understand that we all have a common goal, and you know, the conversations and everything just started to flow so well after that. But for me, I think you know, just the time spent to take the mentees to coordinate with the mentors and with the range was way beyond my expectations. The number of mentors that were available to help people like me who are not as familiar with rifles and crossbows was more than expected as well. It was, you know, it felt like it was one-on-one, and if there was any question, anything needed, any apprehension, it was very well addressed. And because for me, it is, you know, if you're going to take the shot, you want it to be the ethical kill. You don't want to, you know, you want to be as best as you can be. And there's a little bit of, for me, I feel like, can I really learn to shoot a rifle and a crossbow in one day, and then, you know, actually ethically kill a deer, you know, the next time we meet up? That was the big thing. And like I said, with one-on-one instruction with the rifles and crossbow, the mentors really helped you affirm that, no, this is good. You know, you take a few shots and you're like, oh, that's not on exactly where I was aiming. You're like, that's a dead deer. It's like, okay, all right, that's a dead deer. That's all I needed to hear. You know, because I suppose you could go out, you could join a gun range, you could buy a rifle, you could, you know, take all your safety courses and everything and show up at a at a range by yourself and do that. But how long would somebody spend trying to hit a bullseye from 50 yards out and not accomplish that and feel like they can't go afield? So that was a big confidence boost, a big primer. That was really well executed.
Yeah, it was, you know, on my end too, just getting to the point when we were there on the property and getting to meet all you guys and hear a little bit about each of your stories, and then walking around, answering questions, sharing all those things. I remember having a moment, we were standing on, I think it would have been like in the back field 5, maybe somewhere back there. And I remember looking back, and you know, when you're on those hills, you can look back down towards the swamp, and it's kind of a pretty good wide view because of the topography there. And I remember kind of looking over and I saw these 10 new hunters or aspiring hunters and 10 mentors and this property with all these habitat improvements that we've been doing over the years and the blinds we'd put up. And I had this kind of flash where you kind of see like the movie like montage reel of all the things that led up to this. And it was like one of those weird times in life where you step out of yourself just a little bit and can see it for what it is. And I had that's just like, just wow, that it actually happened. We actually have done something that maybe matters. Like maybe this is a really cool thing that actually came together and going to help people. And here's Exhibit A of it actually coming to fruition. And that was exciting to see and encouraging to see that, you know, what began as a inkling of an idea sitting in my office and then led to a whole bunch of debating and talking and arguing and brainstorming, you know, in conference rooms 4 years ago, which then led to, you know, just a whole lot of crazy things happening. So it was wild to see this next step all coming to life. And then it even got wilder when we fast forward another month or so to the first hunt on the property. And interestingly, Forrest was paired to hunt with me that weekend. And then I think your kids got sick, right? Something like that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So sick kids kept Forrest from getting to go, which is a bummer. I
decided, you know, well, that was one of the toughest things, one of the toughest choices I ever had to come to peace with. And, you know, maybe as a lot of fishermen and hunters, I don't know, would agree with me or not, but I'm a big fan of having really good, what I call good juju, like good karma. And so, you know, if I'm skipping out of work to go fishing, I'm probably not going to catch any fish, you know?
Yeah.
But this opportunity was huge, but it took me about 24 hours to really come to that right decision. And that was to call in the sickness and be like, no, I can't do it. I got it. And that's a good thing, right? Because if I probably would have went, I probably would have been driving there. I'm probably not going to shoot a deer because I'm leaving my family at home sick.
Yeah. Well, it all worked out in the end. And since Forrest couldn't go, Evan, you got to join me. And we had a pretty darn cool first hunt on the back 40. Do you want to tell the story? We had, I guess, quickly before you do that, the first hunt we were going to have was going to be an early antlerless season hunt. So we're going to bring all these folks out. Some folks, well, each mentee was paired with a mentor, and then we split up from there as far as where we would go. I think there was 3 or 4 pairs of us that were going to hunt in the back 40, different corners of the farm, and then other groups of folks went to some other properties that we had access to in the general region. So you and me, Evan, were paired together for that trip. Talk to me about how you're feeling leading into it and everything that happened. Let's hear this wild story.
Yeah. So it was pretty. It was a lot to put it, to put it in those terms. I mean, you show up, and again, just being a part of this is already a big deal in itself. And then, about 10 minutes after arriving, it was like, oh, hey, you're cool. You're with Mark. You're good with that, right? And we're going to film you, and it's your first time. And yeah, so it's kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. But
was that nerve wracking?
Maybe a little bit. It didn't take long though. It really did. I mean, everyone was, again, it was very well organized. So it just, it took a little time. And then, and that was really our first time, like, meeting and you were great and just really down to earth. And Mark, our camera guy, was just terrific. And he, he was just a blast to be with. And so the three of us really sort of hit it off well, I think, early. And that made a big difference and really brought down that. It went from, feeling so large and intense, and it kind of boiled down to like, hey, let's go hunt. Like this feels like a hunt, And so it was cool to have that experience where we got to tour with you the property before, because we sort of had an idea of the layout of the land and the layout and where we'd be and what we'd be doing. And I picked up a few tricks from you, even just that, even that day. I carry nose jammer with me now everywhere I go.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. And then, the thought process between how we enter, to not, interfere. We had to be careful because we had so many hunters going out to different parts of the property. So we had to be very strategic there. So there were lessons picked up and also like I think that part of what I struggled with was truly understanding the impact of scent. And, a lot of what you read and listen to and watch is focused around like very intelligent, very, knowledgeable, mature deer. And that's not exactly what I'm going for. I'm looking to fill freezers. And so there's a margin there that we could get away with. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to learn as well. And I don't think it's a great margin, but it wasn't, you didn't have to drop out of a helicopter, basically is what I'm getting at. And to get back there. And so those were lessons learned. But we still took a long way to get to the blind. It was an elevated blind. When we got in it, we realized there was no carpet in it. So we were doing a quick check and figuring out how we could position ourselves so we wouldn't make a lot of noise if we had to turn. And then we got right into it. We got right into, running through the scenarios, and which ended up being, the most critical part. And what made that so critical and elevated the level was the fact that we could easily make noise if we turned a certain way or dropped something. So it was a total check and balance of, okay, this is the scenario. This is the way the deer's coming. What are we going to do? Where's Mark going to go? Where's the other Mark going to go? Where are you going to go? How, can you see? Can you turn? Can you even shoulder the firearm? And so there were several angles. I think there was really 3 angles in which we could, have a pretty decent chance of not only seeing deer, but get a shot at them. And we had just kind of walked through that. And I think we figured out really good positions for each one. And how long were we talking? Like 15 minutes after that?
Yeah, I feel like it was a 10 or 15 minute kind of thing, and then bam.
Yeah, so we just started the kind of, okay, the business part of this done. Like, let's have a conversation, let's chat, and then your face just turned. Like my back was to this part of the blind. You're facing out that window, looking onto this trail that butts up to some woods about 45, 50 yards out, and your face just stopped, and you raise your hand and you just point. You're like, that's a deer. Like that's, and I was like, I was kind of like, well, because it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon at this point.
I don't even know if it might have been earlier than that.
Right, exactly. It was super early in the afternoon. And so we figured, we had a couple hours to just sit around and chit chat. And so all of a sudden it was just game on. And this doe, this nice mature doe, was cruising down this trail. And the trail was a worn trail that led right in front of our blind and then cut through this little, this basically, if for lack of a better term, a funnel between, so the wood line where we were kind of butted up to, and then a wood line on the other side near the honey hole. And there was a food source right there. And that's where she was headed. She was cruising fast. And so the first move was to just turn without spooking her, without too much movement, without too much sound. But her head was up, she was cruising. So, we had to be very cautious and careful about not making too sudden of a movement. And she came right up to the blind. I mean, we're in an elevated blind. She came up within 5 yards of it. And that's when she decided to, okay, thumbs up. kind of spooked, turned and ran back up the trail. And at this point I'm thinking, all right, that was cool. Like, man, there's tons of deer out here. Like, we're done for a minute. And you're like, get your gun up, get in position. She's going to stop. She's going to get right to the top of that hill and stop. And as if like you could like see that in the future, that's exactly what she did. She went 40 yards back up the trail, broadside, stopped, and she stopped for so long that I got the gun mounted, I got set up, I got my sticks on, I mean, everything. And it seemed like an eternity, although I'm sure in hindsight it wasn't that long, but it was just picture perfect. And you said, if you're comfortable, take the shot. And I said, I'm going to take the shot, and the shot rang. And that part's kind of a blur for me. I really relied on you and Mark to tell me, like, like, did it look good? Like, did it look like, a lead hit? And it was, I mean, and after that, it was just jitters and shakes and emotions. And I mean, just utter disbelief. Like, I don't know that I've ever had that much disbelief all at once.
It was pretty crazy. Even for me, I remember just I was shaking. I was so excited. That was awesome. And so we'll fast forward, I don't know. I can't remember how long we waited. We didn't wait too terribly long because we felt good about the hit, and we went back there and she ran, I don't know, 50, something like that, 50 yards, something along those lines. And we found her right there in the honey hole. What was that like, walking up to that deer and seeing that you'd actually did this thing?
It was a huge relief in so many ways. I mean, there was so much pressure built up to this point by prior hunts, and the hours and the dollars that were invested. And the time that was put in, selfishly my own, but then by others as well. I mean, there was, it just felt, it all of a sudden felt like it was doable. It all of a sudden felt like this happens, and this can happen, and this is a real thing. And it's right there. And there was this very, she was pretty. I mean, she was a very like regal and majestic animal, and it didn't feel as sad. I don't know. Like, there's a part of it that's, the part that is the harvest can, I didn't know how I'd feel about that, because I hadn't done it, and I'm an animal lover, and I know we all are, and we get into this for it, but I didn't know exactly how that would feel. But it didn't feel, it was more grateful than any sort of sadness. And it was just an overwhelming experience. And I was basically speechless. And I think back to it often and fondly. And it was just, it was inspiring, and it was just, and honestly, it was fun. It was a lot. It was fun. It was so much fun. It was energetic. There was real energy there.
That's really well said. I mean, it was all those things, even for me, which is what's kind of crazy and pretty darn cool about this pursuit, is that I've been doing this for 30 years, and getting to just be with someone experiencing those things for the first time was so incredibly rewarding. And it just feels, it's so, for lack of a better term, cool to see someone getting to step into this world and get to experience these things that I found so rewarding and profound, and so satisfying. So it was just it was an awesome day. It was so cool to see it work out for you. And even though that hunt specifically went really, really fast, like you said, you had been trying for a long time. You've been working hard to try to figure these things out yourself, and so it felt like this really great moment of fruition where all that work finally did pay off. And I was just very happy for you, Evan, and great shooting too.
Oh, Thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, it was awesome. I mean, all three of us were freaking out. I mean, it was truly like, your feelings, Mark's feelings, and mine. I mean, they were all super genuine. I mean, we had set out to do something, and I mean, it must have been a great feeling to see the back 40 do what the back 40, was meant to do as well. And so quick.
Yeah. Crazy. And then you were able to go back out the next morning with a different set of mentors and reinvent the wheel all over again. You did it 2 days in a row.
Yeah, that was nuts. Yeah, I got to go out with Xavier the next morning, and of course at this point, like, pressure's off, like, the feelings is, like, hey, I'm here, let's do it. Let's go see what we see. And we get out there well before first light. We get up in a different elevated box blind, and nothing. I mean, we're overlooking a field, and we're having a good time. We're chatting it up, and we're looking around, but we didn't have a great line of sight where we were. We were looking over some really tall grass, and he goes, I really think that if they come, they're going to come down this area over here, which was a trail that was cut there for power, phone poles and power lines and things like that. And so he kind of knew it well enough to know that if anything was going to happen, it's going to happen over that way. And it was about 65 yards. So once it got, light enough that you could kind of see what you were doing in there, we did the same thing. We ran through the motions, like, okay, unlikely scenario, they come here, but it's still a lane. Let's try it. And thank God we did, because, a little bit of fatigue was setting in about 9:30, 9:45. We're kind of like, people are, we're starting to communicate with others and talking about when we're going to wrap it up. And all of a sudden, right down that trail, just like he thought, right down that trail, we see a head pop out, and it's a line of does, and another mature doe, really pretty much equal in size to the one the day before. And he threw out a call. He gave her a map to stop her. She stopped broadside, and while he was doing that, I was getting set up. And because we had the plan in place, it went quickly, even faster than the day prior, and got a shot on her, and she went, probably 20, 30 yards. Hank came out. Hank came out to help with that one. And it was I just couldn't, again, just utter disbelief.
2 deer in 2 days. Not bad, my friend. Not bad at all. So let's jump over to you, Forrest, and fast forward a couple months. You had to put your aspirations on hold because of family obligations, which was a good call and a good man move. So kudos to you.
Yeah.
But we get to December, and we hosted another hunt for anyone who wanted to come out and try again, or anyone, like in your case, where you hadn't been able to hunt or hadn't been able to get a deer yet. Same kind of thing. Everyone came out. A bunch of mentors came out. We all split up to hunt different places. Group of us went to different locations on the back 40 because I guess I got first dibs on locations. I picked the honey hole again for us, and that's what we were gonna do. So, Forrest, can you do for us what Evan just did? Kind of fill us in on how you were feeling leading up to the hunt. Can you walk us through what happened and your perspective on that whole experience?
Yeah. So leading up to the hunt, it was typical mid-December Michigan day, super overcast, some snow on the ground, kind of melting, in between that 32 and 33 mark, where would like to see some snow rather than some freezing rain. And, the weather alone was a little bit of already a mental challenge for me, thinking about going through in my mind about, am I going to get super cold? Is this, am I going to be shivering when I try and take the shot and that kind of thing? And running through scenarios in my head, what questions should I ask and that type of thing. And once we all met up and Mark, you and I, when we just started walking, you just started prepping me for everything and giving me heads up. This is what we're going to do. Just like Evan was talking about before, and getting the, starting the walk to the blind, and the heart rate just started to kind of elevate quite a bit there with excitement. And, I kind of felt like it was, like when you sit on a roller coaster and you're just, when you get in the seat, and then all of a sudden you're just start climbing like up a main hill, like you're at Cedar Point or something. And you're like, okay, not turning back now. I'm not walking away. And here we go. So, got into the blind. It was still kind of misting. There was ice on the ladder steps.
So icy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And, it wasn't really bright out, real low clouds. And I'm thinking, oh man, it might get dark before our shooting hours are approached, and, but from there, once you started talking us through if the deer comes from this direction and that direction, that's what we're going to do. Okay, now let's practice. And do you feel comfortable? And, that kind of thing. And then, just the initial sit down and holding the rifle and looking out, was a pretty surreal experience. Like here I am, I'm, officially doing it in my mind. And, that was a huge, as simple as it sounds, it was a very big experience, because there's a reflection of everything that had come up to that point. And, so we sat there and talked about where deer could be showing up from. And I don't know, I think an hour went by and nothing happened. And I think another hour went by and nothing happened. And we entered our prime time. And I think shooting hours ended, I think, around 5:31, I believe. And I think right around right around 5 o'clock, I start thinking to myself, okay, all right. I started talking through thoughts in my head, like, this probably not going to happen. That's okay. I'll be like a see deer. That's okay. That kind of thing. And hearing from Mark and the other guys in general, like, it can happen fast. It can happen with the snap of a finger. And, that was the optimism, my mind, I was combating the negative thoughts with. And so we were just sitting there, and it was just, I think, 5:10-ish. And then Mark, I believe you spotted the first deer. Oh, there's a deer way off over that first hill. And I believe it was out of range. There were two of them.
Yep.
And we moved into position, right? And put a scope. I believe I know it was at least one doe. I don't know if you remember.
There was a spike and a doe. And they were in that one hard to get to position that we'd had to practice. Like, I would have to get out of my chair, move to the other side of the blind. You'd have to move forward. But like you said, we'd practice, like, okay, if this scenario happens, we've got to do this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And we figured it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was crucial, because you were sitting to the right of me, and that was the window I needed to shoot out of. And without practicing that, I mean, something could have dropped, or a scuffle, or some kind of noise potentially ruined it. But so yeah, get the scope on the doe, and you ranged her, and I believe it was just out 100 yards, a little bit out of my comfort zone for, pretty much being a novice marksman, if you will. And I believe they just kind of started quartering away and just kind of fading, walking back further and further in the opposite direction, and from there it was like, oh, okay, well, all right, there was the opportunity. That's cool. I'm happy. I'm good, and I believe Mark, cameraman, brought his camera back in, and Mark, I think you were just I don't know, adjusting something but not looking out. And I was just on the scope, and all of a sudden, from the right, it was like Christmas morning. I saw, it's like that first image of presents. It was like 10 does just started walking very, very gracefully right right from the other side of the field, and I was just like, oh, now this is a for sure thing. And it was, I feel like it was half the distance. It was twice as close as the first deer I saw.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, here we go. And now it was, when I talk about the roller coasters, like now I'm just like, I feel like I could just scream, but I can't. Got to focus now, you know? And that was the image that I replay almost every day since, in my mind, that, and seeing those deer walk in so slowly and with, I don't know, 5, 7, 10 minutes left of shooting time, and keyed in on the first, I think there were 2 or 3 that first rolled in, and then wanted to key in on the largest doe, and I think it was like the second or third one, and then they started to overlap after getting the scope on the bigger of the 2 or 3. And then it's like, okay, we're just waiting. And then I think there's another 5, 6, 7 more, what appeared to me was very like large or mature doe. And I'm like, oh man, I just got to wait for this to break up and go from there. And Mark, you were talking me through it, and, you know, all the minor details, like, hey, do I cock the hammer? No, not yet. Okay. And then once confirming that we were both on the same page with the range and the exact deer, I was going to take a shot at, you know, it was, I just remember, you know, taking the breath, and I remember still being nervous, but not shaky nervous. And I was surprised by that, and took the shot. And I remember actually seeing the doe get hit, and I thought it was too high. It looked like the shot hit the spine potentially. But luckily, having Mark, the cameraman, there to kind of replay and see, you know, possibly upper lung shot, you know, we should be okay, and that kind of thing. And from there, it was, yeah, all pure adrenaline rush and shaking and not being able to stop smiling. And yeah, that was, you know, just like you see on all the TV shows and whatnot, and hear about. I was unsure about how I would feel taking the shot on an animal that I love, and like Evan mentioned, being an animal lover and that kind of thing, but taking a life is a whole different thing. How am I going to feel about that? And amazingly enough, I did not have those kinds of thoughts or feelings. And I kind of attribute that maybe to just human nature. I don't know, for survival or whatnot, but yeah, so that was the shot. And we waited there for, I don't know, I cannot remember how long we waited. I feel like it was about 45 minutes or so.
Yeah,
maybe an hour.
Something like that.
Yeah. And I remember it was definitely dark, like the headlamps were out, everything like that. Other mentors came over to our field and began the tracking process. And that was something that I didn't really think through previous, that would be actually kind of a challenge. And another thing later in retrospect, I'm really grateful for, because when I read or try and educate myself about tracking deer, it's like, oh yeah, follow the blood. Okay. You know, just mark where you've been and just follow it. But then when we started to track the deer and finding the blood, and then finding the next drop and finding the next drop, and then we hit kind of a wall there. And even though it was only like 10 minutes, that feeling was not fun.
Yeah.
That was yeah. That's when I started to feel concerned, but not like I might not find the deer, but almost like a concern, like a responsibility, almost like you let somebody down almost.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think that was the first sign to me of the connection was formed with the animal. And then walking up and finding the blood trail again. And then seeing the deer, seeing the doe and discovering it was just absolutely amazing. I felt attached to the deer. I felt like it was almost like my pet. And then I had that melancholy thought of, but I just took its life. But the beauty of the deer and just the whole process up to finding it was a sense of relief. And now I felt like I've completed the process, and now I want to do whatever it takes to take the ultimate care of this doe, right? So yeah, from there, that was when I think a switch was flipped, kind of like having a kid or getting married or any major accomplishment, or just something that triggers you to change your mindset.
What did you think about the field dressing process? You mentioned that is one of the things before getting to go on the mentored experience that was, that was concerning to you. You wondered if you'd be able to do it, if you know if you could figure it out, how difficult it would be. We walked through that together, and you completed the job. How did that go in your mind?
So I was right. That was the part of the whole process that really kind of launched me on the whole, seeking mentors and whatnot. And I'm the kind of person that gets kind of queasy around animals being dissected, and I didn't do well in biology class. I had to stand in the hall because I couldn't handle it. and that was like my big, okay, this is where I'm confronting, I'm leaving my comfort zone, and I'm going to start cutting into this animal, and I just hope I don't throw up or make a fool out of myself. And, when people would say it's not as bad as you think, it was not as bad as I thought. The initial cut into the skin, Mark, you've shown me exactly where to start, and just start making the incision and whatnot. I was amazed at how clean and simple of a process it was. And but I still had that fear in my mind, like when I get to the stomach part and stuff starts falling out everywhere, am I going to lose it? And I don't know if it was the adrenaline or not, but I kind of feel like it was just that connection. Like it didn't even cross my mind. Cutting across the belly, going through, getting everything out, making cuts, in certain areas that you're pointing me to do, was a lot easier than I thought. I think I was expecting like blood to be gushing out everywhere, or
right,
arteries with blood like splattering everywhere and things, but it's not that at all. And that was a big relief for me. And it went quicker than I thought, and it was a big sense of accomplishment and a big confidence booster for, okay, I definitely feel like I can do this on my own now. And that was the big thing. Like, can I do this on my own? And I felt like I had that after leaving that. Even though, Mark, you helped me with so much on where and how, it was getting my hands in there and physically doing it that gave me the confidence to say that, yeah, I can do this on my own. Well, I need to refer to some things on how, like what cuts and where to make it again. Yeah, but I can look that up and be like, oh yeah, okay, that's what I have to do. But I'm not apprehensive about going afield and harvesting a deer because I might get, I don't know, grossed out or screw up something with the dressing that would make for a really bad experience.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear you feel that way now after having done it. And I think your experience and your apprehensiveness leading into it that's not uncommon. And so to your point, you just got to get in there and do it once. And then once you've crossed that bridge, it's a whole lot easier to walk it again in the future. So what I want to know next is about what happens next for both of you guys. But before we get to that, I want to kind of hit pause on your personal stories and put a little call to action here for anyone listening who has found themselves in your shoes. Anyone who's listening who has been intrigued by hunting, who is hunting curious, who maybe has tried it and been getting started but is struggling, or maybe this is someone who's never done it ever before but kind of has this little voice in the back of their mind that makes them think, man, I should try it, and somehow they stumbled on this podcast and they would love to get a chance to go through what you guys did. If there's anyone listening who's in those shoes, Hank, my friend, can you drop in, from your expert perspective, where people can find these opportunities, how they can find these opportunities? Can you give us that right now, rather than at the very end of the show? Let's talk about that right now. Also, because I know, Hank, you might need to leave. I want to make sure you get to say this before you do. Where can people just find this?
Go ahead. Yeah, just deerassociation.com/FTF. You'll find my email on there, hank@deerassociation.com. We also have deerassociation.com/new hunter. And if they're a new hunter, it will, we ask them for their personal information. We can plot them on a map. It'll send them some resources, most of them free, and advertise a couple paid ones. But it'll put us on the map, and that's how we notify individuals of new programs coming online or other opportunities around them. We really try to keep these programs state specific because of licensing and that kind of thing. And we want to teach people how to hunt where they come from. So if you'll go to any of those, contact us, fill out that new hunter survey. It just lets us figure out where you are, and we'll contact you with opportunities. We also have a mentor sign up for potential mentors out there if they're willing to mentor for us. And it's built to do the same thing from the opposite side, to connect those mentors with new hunters and programs we have. So I appreciate that, Mark. If you'll allow me, I'd like to roll back a couple things before we move on to what's next for these guys. Yeah. Just a few comments and stuff. Well, first off, Forrest said something just a minute ago about having the confidence to continue. And really, that's what it comes down to here. That's all we're doing, is we're giving these new hunters the confidence to realize that this is attainable and something that they can bite off and chew. And that's really what's happened here. They've managed to be successful, which is great. They got their hands dirty. But it's really about just building that confidence. And yes, the gutting is often a very daunting, monumental thing that they need to figure out, because, just like Forrest, a responsible person isn't going to go out there and take that shot if they can't take care of it. But lastly, just, answering the question that I am a hunter is just a confidence level. It's just saying that's something I can do and I'm going to do it. And so kudos, guys. I hope we got you there, but there's a lot more to it. And they told their stories, and they told about how they found the program and that stuff. And their stories are not unique. I mean, I see hundreds of these every year, and their stories are very common. What you guys have done at Meat Eater, there's been a lot of negative press about R3 programs and sharing hunting on social media recently. And it's really sad, but what you've done at Meat Eater and the responsible, approachable, just awesome view of hunting and that lifestyle, just what both of them attested to, just a little while ago. And that being on Netflix has offered entirely new generations and people who had never run into hunting in such a responsible and beautiful light, but they're seeing it on their TVs and so it really is this Netflix effect that I think we're seeing a little bit of growth in hunting right now, not enough to celebrate. We've seen a lot of societal trends that are helping, but we've been able to find these new potential hunters through non-traditional avenues and really break out of our traditional hunting spheres and circles and culture and that kind of stuff. So that's a lot of what has happened here. I also want to say that, we've learned a lot from these new hunters, and that's something we didn't talk about. I mean, the first evening on the back 40, I was sitting in my truck when y'all shot. That was the first year of this Field to Fork program, but also the first year on the back 40, and very fitting that you were the mentor. So it was exciting for me just sitting in my truck in the parking lot. But you showed them how to clean the deer that night. We've got great photography. It was a lot of fun. We had that camaraderie of deer camp, even just as a group out there in the field and meeting up after the hunt. We can learn stuff from these new hunters. Evan led the butchering demonstration the Sunday morning after he shot his second deer. And believe me, I tried to put him somewhere that I didn't think he would harvest a deer on Sunday, but he must just have good luck. But I helped him, but he's a chef. He knows how to break down animals, and he has skills that I don't have. So we can learn a lot, and we can gain from taking these new hunters afield. And then lastly, I'll say that we had a culinary social after the December hunt, and Evan cooked for the group. So he's a better chef than I am. I appreciate the nice comments, but at the end of the day, we didn't bring somebody who didn't have something to offer back to us. And so we selected these candidates based off a lot of different reasons, and we have a selection panel, a group. I don't select them personally. But we read through their profiles, their survey answers, and we selected these candidates based on, a panel and voting. But, we debated this. Forrest was like the prototypical candidate. He found it on First Light social media. Showed up in a First Light hat for our training day. It's just an amazing candidate. And then Evan and his sister both applied, as he alluded to. And, we're sitting there thinking, one of them could mentor the other if we took one of them. And, we take adults because they can mentor for us the next weekend. You can advocate and become better advocates for hunting than we ever can in their own circles and peer groups. So it just really, there's a reason we do this, and it's the efficiency of the model. But we decided to take both Evan and his sister because we decided, Evan might not be able to teach his sister. It's wrong or vice versa. If we took Emily, she might not be a good teacher. Like we've run into this with husband and wife pairs where we're like, God, can you imagine if you had to learn from your significant other? They might not be the best one, but we ended up, selecting these people for very different reasons, but we get all that information on the front end, and we try to make our best educated decision. But, Evan's going to mentor for us next year. I hope Forrest will still be a part of the program, but we can take new hunters, take them afield. They can cook venison better than we can. They can advocate for hunting better than we can. And honestly, they can mentor the next weekend or take their friends or their, family, kids, whatever. Forrest has 4 kids. I expect he'll take them afield in the future. And then, lastly, I'll just say that there was also follow-up hunting opportunities. And that's why we trained everyone on guns and crossbows, is we really encourage people to get back out on the property during the duration of the season outside of our kind of organized events. And I know a number of hunters took advantage of that.
Yeah, it was really cool to see all those different opportunities arise and see the group of people out there have this experience. And tell me this, Hank, I think of our hunters, all but one ended up killing, having success killing their first deer over the course of these 2 hunts. Am I right on that?
That's correct. Yep. We finished the season 9 for 10. We didn't get 100% success. Well, but I don't think that's how we judge success. But we did have 9 out of 10 hunters harvest their first deer this fall. Yeah,
that's pretty incredible. And the back 40, I think we took 4 off the back 40. Does that sound right?
I think just 3.
3?
2 the first organized hunt, 1 the second. Evan, you were out there as much as I was coming up from North Carolina, but I think just 3 off the back 40 this fall.
And then I think there was a couple opportunities, misses or things like that. So there was opportunities, I guess. Correct. Point being, I might be biased, but you tell me if I'm wrong here. I feel like the back 40 provided. I feel like the back 40 was a great hosting ground and training ground for these new hunters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been our tagline.
Yep, it sure has.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater.
So let's get back to you two then, Evan and Forrest. I'm curious to hear about your thoughts moving forward. Evan, where's your head been at since that experience? Are you going to keep hunting? Have you kept hunting? What do you think the future holds for you when it comes to this pursuit?
Yeah, I will keep hunting. I have kept hunting. And on top of that, I'm going to, develop more. Anybody who is interested in my circles that wants to hunt, I'm gonna carry the torch. So after the September hunt, Corey was kind enough to get my sister and I back out on the back 40 several times. There's not been a point where I've been on the back 40 hunting that I haven't seen deer. I'm not kidding. Wow. Maybe not an opportunity for a shot every time, but I've never not. It's unbelievable. You see deer every time, and so they, he gave up some prime hunting time. I mean, real prime hunting time to take us back out. Hank kept following up, like, we got to get Emily on a deer. You got too many, we got to get your sister one, just joking around and having a good time with it. And so there, that was a lot of fun. And I got a little bit of a taste of what it was like to sort of be a mentor. It was much more about her hunts than my hunt, in those times. And then another trip out there, Corey and I, we went on a hunt, but it ended up just being a training session on saddle. And I'm so comfortable and confident in a saddle that during the rut, I got up in a tree and I went out on my own on public land and private land. I got on deer the first time on my own, completely on my own, and without even scouting other than just e-scouting and using onX. I mean, I got out there, and the very first hunt, I saw deer, and all of these things. Oh my gosh, it was unbelievable. And then the crescendo of that trip was the final day I was deer hunting. I actually had an 8-point buck come within 15 yards of me. I never got a shot at him. He never showed me anything but his eyes and his antlers. But we had this really unbelievable hour and a half exchange where there was a field full of does in front of me. I was grunting. He was tearing the woods to the ground. He was so angry that some other buck was out there with his does, but he would not step out. He would not step out. He just wouldn't do it. All of those things that we were taught and we were told, to be applied and put into practice, and went from years of not seeing deer and putting in the same amount of time and the same amount of effort, to all of a sudden, using sticks and being in a saddle and being in a tree and seeing deer on most sits, and or even having an encounter with a true, with a true buck. And so I'm hooked. I'm totally hooked. There's definitely no turning back for me. And And so I'm taking my sister and a buddy out turkey hunting. It'll be their first time really going out on a turkey hunt. We're going to do that. And I've started dabbling in duck hunting last season. And so, we're figuring that out, and we're going to continue to do it. I want to look at getting my niece and nephew out there. And then I've got a bunch of buddies that come from the hospitality and culinary side of things. All of us fish, but they've expressed interest. But again, like myself, grew up in the suburbs and maybe didn't have the experience growing up. And so now I feel confident enough that we can get out and we can do some stuff. And I've been talking to friends and networks and colleagues and people have been just so gracious about opening up their land to let me hunt and to let others. I don't know. It's like it really, I think it goes back to what Hank said about the confidence. And once you have the confidence, doors really start to open. So the biggest hurdle is certainly just getting started. But once you're through that, it gets a lot easier. It does. And in some ways it gets harder, but I think that the initial step is the hardest, and once you get through that, the confidence starts to set in and people see that. And so, Forrest and I were actually talking about this last night, and we've coined ourselves the mentees of Mark. We're still working out what the matching tattoos are going to look like, but we're headed down the road of like something like, your face, like a Joe Rogan type thing. We'll figure it out. We'll let you know. Probably do, but yeah, we're planning a hunt. We're already planning on putting our skills together and seeing what we can do.
That is so cool. So cool to hear. Except for the tattoo part. I think that would be, that sounds terrifying. Get my face on your shoulder. But outside of that, I'm excited to hear all that. So Forrest, what about from your perspective? What have your thoughts been in the days and weeks after that, and where you think things are going to go from here?
Yeah. So, immediately the next day after the hunt, it was about 2.5 hour drive from where I live, from where Backforty is, and in West Michigan. And from there, it was how do I get this thing processed? There's a processor in the nearby town, but I didn't want to drive 2.5 hours back, if I didn't have to pick up my processed deer. And that was another thing that I wasn't really expecting to have to kind of work through. Was okay. I just harvested a deer. It's in the back of my car. I'm in a hotel room by myself. It's late. What do I do tomorrow morning with this deer? Luckily, Xavier Austin gave me a recommendation to a processor back in West Michigan, closer to where I live, and bringing that deer to the processor, meeting the processor, telling him about the experience. And it was a feeling of elation still, and almost like I don't know how to describe it. It was lingering joy, and immediately after that, it was what's the best way to cook this? Wonder what my yield is going to be, how much meat I'm going to get. Is my wife going to like to eat venison? Are my kids going to like to eat venison? And so my mind shifted to kind of like the consuming part of it. Mm-hmm. And after getting the deer back and bringing it home, and I had the processor keep the hide for me, because I said I know to tie flies. I'd like to tie some flies with this to commemorate the event. And like, oh yeah. And I walked in with the box of meat, and my wife was there in the kitchen, and I had the hide wrapped up in the back, and she had this big smile on her face, and she went up and touched the hide on my shoulder, and she's like, "Oh, that's such a great blanket. Did you get that for me?" I said, "No, this is the deer hide." That's like, okay, I'm good with this. And I told her all about it. But it was a really neat feeling to have the kids come around and be like, oh my God, Dad shot a deer. There it is. And have them see that and have that, that additional like joy kind of come into life, that this is a really cool thing, not just for me, that, you know, other people are into it too. And so, you know, moving forward, have cooked some things. Evan has helped me. It's great that he knows so much about culinary things. So when I'm like, hey, need quick question on what's the fat to meat ratio, if I want to do that kind of thing. And so we've been keeping in touch, Evan and I, through a bunch of text messages. And then just last night, I think I had another cooking question for him as I'm getting ready to do a tenderloin meal. And I said, hey, can we just talk? So last night we talked for over an hour about what we're going to do next.
That's awesome.
So really, really excited already again, you know, for the next thing, and looking forward to giving back as working with the program again next fall and helping out where needed and that kind of thing. So pretty much immediate next actions are kind of like by the book, like, hey, let's start scouting. Let's figure out what tools we need. Let's start putting some dates out there. Let's, you know, and that kind of thing. So I think you guys kicked us off. We're off and running.
Yeah.
I'm like a proud dad sitting over here, just smiling from ear to ear. I gotta tell you, I mean, you talk about that joy that's lingering, you know, that you mentioned, Forrest, and I'm feeling the same thing over here. And I can't emphasize enough for anybody listening that is a current hunter, just how much fun it is to help other people in this kind of way. I mean, it's just as satisfying and exciting and fulfilling as being on the other side. So I thank you both for taking a shot and taking a chance to pursue this thing. Thanks for the courage to explore this new pursuit, and then for following through with it and sharing your experience now, and for committing to helping other people in the future. I just think it's incredible. And you have both helped re-energize me and help remind me of why I do what I do. So thank you. And as mentees of Mark, as I mentioned back in December, and it didn't pan out this year, but I do this and I will do this. As mentees of Mark, you are in an exclusive club that does have invitations to future hunts on my properties I hunt here in Michigan. I'm going to get a mentee group hunt together. I think we should try to make it happen this year, where we can all get out and hunt one of my spots that I still hunt, and see if we can all get nostalgic about all of our early hunts together and do it all over again. So let's make that happen. All right.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's unbelievable. I'll do the food.
I like it.
Forrest and I'll take care.
It sounds good.
Absolutely.
Hank, do you have any final words you want to leave us with?
I really don't. I think they've said it. I mean, their testimonials are a lot more than I could ever convey to anybody. But I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you being a part of the program. I'm glad we found you, and I appreciate you taking your time to tell your stories here.
Absolutely, and thank you, Hank.
All right,
and of course, Mark and the rest of the crew. We can't thank you enough. This wouldn't have happened without your generosity. So, thank you.
Well, you are all very, very welcome. It's been my pleasure. It's been our pleasure. It's been a cliche to say, but it's been our privilege. It's been very, 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 very cool. So with that,
one thing I should say is we did film these hunts, as we alluded to, and we will be releasing this content in the coming months.
I kind of forgot about that. What's the game? What's the game plan? Is this going to be like, what are you putting together? Like, can you give us any kind of preview?
I need you guys to be just, hitting Mark, the other Mark, no, but we wanted to, kind of show the process. We've done it before, but it was a unique opportunity and opportunity to kind of highlight a community-based field to fork. And so we wanted to document the program and tell and show what we've done, and hopefully inspire others, just like this podcast, we hope does. So we're just going to put out some summary content and use some of the educational bits that we recorded in the in betweens of the hunts. But we're looking forward to getting that content out and letting the world see it.
Very cool. I look forward to that as well. Forrest, Evan, Hank, appreciate you taking the time here today. Let's all get together and chat again sometime soon, all right?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right, and that is a wrap. Thank you for tuning in. I'll just reiterate what Hank said. Please go to the National Deer Association website and find out more if you want to become a participant in the Field to Fork program. You can be mentored by folks like we talked about today. Or on the flip side, if you want to be a mentor and there is a need for more people like you and I to help out, please do. I tell you, from my perspective as a mentor, it's one of the absolute best things I did last year and the year prior and the year prior to that. It's just as rewarding, if not more rewarding, for us as the mentor. I'm telling you, I'm not bullshitting you. You're going to enjoy it. So go ahead and give it a little time, give a day or two. I think you will absolutely not regret it. So check it out. Go to the National Deer Association website to learn more. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate you. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe out there. And until next time, stay wired to hunt.